He looked out the window and exhaled. "Oh, not again," he groaned. He realized he had to do something. Not only to him, the man was unpleasant. His neighbors were affected. How could he fix it? Tim and his wife loved their modifications. For years, they wanted to accomplish this. Finally, they had enough money to build their ideal house. Their neighbor bought the house next door, ruining their plans. After moving in, he complained about Tim and his wife. He said their generator was too loud. Thunderstorms necessitated the generator. Thus, they were powerless. One morning, Tim saw the neighbor's kids setting up sports nets in a third of his backyard without permission. Tim was delighted to confront the kids outside. They were polite, unlike their father. They apologized and removed the nets. Tim allowed the nets as long as they were in the back and didn't damage his property. Tim and his wife renovated their backyard a few weeks later. Planned and hired landscapers and contractors. They couldn't wait to create a backyard oasis. Tim heard something strange while rearranging his patio. Tim saw his neighbor talking to his construction crew in his backyard. He hadn't told him. He screamed in his backyard. If you like my videos, don't forget to like or subscribe. Thanks in advance. He told workers to be quiet. Tim couldn't believe his ears. Who was he to rule? He ran outside to investigate. As he approached, his neighbor said, "No, you're doing it wrong, it should be done this way." Furious contractors were red. One contractor asked Tim, "This guy says you asked him to come over." Tim was astonished. He confronted his neighbor. His neighbor acted offended, saying he was only helping him. Tim asked his neighbor to leave. Unfortunately, this was just the start. Tim saw his neighbor inspecting the contractor's work one Saturday morning. His neighbor suggested a more personal role, making matters worse. He examined the concrete setting paving stones before placing them back. "Why?" Tim yelled. Tim continued, "Stay away from my property." The neighbor glared and left. Tim had to act. Tim asked a contractor, "Can we move those trees to the back?" After explaining, the contractor laughed. He agreed and offered to call the surveyor. The crew moved all the trees to the back of his property and built a thick tree wall between the two properties. Tim's neighbor was furious. He fled his house screaming about breaking the law. Things escalated further. Tim's neighbor grabbed his phone after a few minutes of running and swearing. A city surveyor was summoned to inspect the yard. Surveyors measure property blueprints. Unfortunately for Tim's neighbor, everything checked out. No laws were broken. Tim and his wife ensured the tree fence on his property was 8 inches tall. Tim raged. It was time to punish him for crossing the line. Tim determined to annoy him. A few days later, a thunderstorm started the couple's generator. Tim's loud machine rattled the houses. His neighbor saw Tim smiling from his window. The noise was unavoidable. Tim had another great idea. Tim purchased a generator timer. He attached it to the generator and set it to start every week for 30 minutes. Tim waited on his balcony for the generator to work again the following Saturday. His neighbor swore at Tim from his balcony in his pajamas. "No storm," he shouted. "Stop it." Tim said, "I'm testing weekly. It's been acting up." Tim left smiling. He was buying another home addition and finishing his backyard project. Tim and his wife installed several home security cameras. He preferred safety over risk. His neighbor surprised him. What if he came to fix his new electrical installation? One final task remained. Tim posted his bizarre story on Reddit's Petty Revenge thread. He described his neighbor's behavior and his revenge. Redditors soon started giving him feedback. "I dug it for a family that lives in a heavily wooded area and they have a big generator," one Redditor said. The first time it started doing its weekly thing, I thought the kids next door were idling their dirt bike next to the window. The neighbor should have been nicer. That'll be a pain to listen to weekly for the rest of forever, another wrote. Most users supported Tim. Well handled, wrote one. I'm happy with this revenge, another said. Some users warned that Tim's neighbor may annoy him. Some even suggested his neighbor was dangerous. Some Redditors suggested Tim buy security cameras to gather evidence if the neighbor doesn't stop bothering him. Another person said, I would be concerned that my new trees might suddenly die off due to an angry neighbor. Is Tim right? Thanks for watching. I'll see you again in the next video.